How's it going, everyone? It's Anime Outlet, and this is part 2 of What If Deku Had a Cat Quirk. And now, before I start this part off, I would like to ask you all to join the channel Discord down in the description below. Also, I am looking for a thumbnail maker to make my thumbnails for these videos. And if you join the channel Discord, remember down in the description, there is going to be a server channel on the Discord called Thumbnail Competition. Just post a thumbnail of what you think any one of my what ifs thumbnails could be. So say, for example, you want to make a what if Deku was a legendary Super Saiyan thumbnail, which you would then make the thumbnail and post it into the Thumbnail Competition server channel. And that is how you're basically going to be entered for a chance to become my thumbnail maker. Of course, we'll work everything out if you do end up winning on Discord and DMs or whatever works for you all. So now, let's begin. All of the Class 1A students would be walking into the classroom, as they would all sit down waiting for their next class to begin. Lunch had just ended, and they were all pretty jittery and excited. Today was the day of their first hero class, as they were all very antsy and just sitting in their seats waiting for their hero teacher to be revealed. As all of a sudden the door comes smashing in, as All Might would be standing there as if he was glowing, as all of the students' eyes would light up besides Izuku. Izuku had really just forgotten about All Might, as there was really no room for him to remember anything when all he was thinking about was survival, because that's all he should have been thinking about, as he was in the wilderness needing to just survive. So he really just forgot and buried the memory about All Might and all of the heroes that were just heroes when he was a kid. So when All Might burst through the door, Izuku was the only one who didn't realize who All Might was. As Izuku would be sitting there, everyone would just be crazed by what All Might was. They've never seen All Might in person, just only on the news and in comics and everything else, as they were all just excited to see the number one hero right in front of them. As All Might would then walk up to the chalkboard before grabbing a piece of chalk, sketching out something that they were going to be doing, as he would tell them they were going to be entering into a building as two teams. One team as the villains and one team as the heroes. The villains will hide a fake device, as that is going to be just the whole thing. The heroes will have 15 minutes to supposedly deactivate it by touching the device or by restraining all of the villains, and that would be how they won. However, if the villains are able to stall enough time and the heroes end up having the clock wind down, then that means the villains were to win. And now the teams will be picked for this exercise, as All Might would then start to read aloud names. Izuku would be paired up with Bakugo, as they would end up being faced off against Todoroki and Momo. As Bakugo would glare back at Izuku, as Izuku would look straight in front of him to see Bakugo twisting his body to glare at him, which Izuku really would pay no mind to, as All Might would say off the rest of the teams that he created last night, or the night before, as he would then tell them to go down into just their locker rooms. Their hero costumes had been made by their designs already and were sitting in their lockers. Don't be late, All Might would say, as the entirety of the class would rush down into the locker rooms before getting changed and then heading out to which testing site All Might had told them to go to. As they would arrive to see All Might there, as they would then walk out there, as All Might would tell them, great, the first two teams, first thing will be Izuku's team against Todoroki's team. Izuku would be excited to face off against Todoroki. This was basically his first real fight, as Todoroki's team would end up being the heroes, as Izuku and Bakugo's team would end up being the villains. Izuku would just give off a sigh of relief, knowing that if he was the heroes, him and Bakugo really wouldn't work too well together to find the device. However, if they were villains, they could possibly just defend it quite easily. So Izuku would end up, just walking into the room before jumping all the way up to the top by hopping up one stair. Well, not one stair, but skipping stairs at a time so he can make it to the top fast enough. They only had 5 minutes to hide the device. So when Izuku got to the top, he would end up placing the device down and would end up sitting down on a chair next to him, as he would then turn into a normal cat before sitting down. As Izuku would then hear All Might come over the intercoms, telling them that the 5 minutes were up. As Bakugo, seeing this, would instantly rush out the door and would start to race down the stairs. He wanted a good fight, and Todoroki of the other team knew exactly what Bakugo was going to do. They've already been classmates for around 2 to 3 weeks, and Todoroki has had enough time to see and analyze Bakugo's personality. So, knowing this, Todoroki knew Bakugo was going to try something or pull something as quick as possible, so Todoroki would be on edge around every single corner. And one corner he would end up catching a glimpse of sparks, as he would then jump back behind the corner before seeing the wall before him get obliterated by a massive explosion, as Todoroki would look on in shock before calming down and sending a massive wall of ice towards Bakugo, as this wall of ice would end up hitting Bakugo's leg, causing him to twist in a weird motion, as Todoroki would then grab Bakugo's neck, slamming him up against the wall, as Bakugo would then smile before twisting his hand, revealing it to Todoroki's chest, sending a massive explosion right into it, as Todoroki would be sent flying back, going right through a couple of walls, as he would look towards Momo, as if telling her to run for the top of the building, as Momo would easily get by Bakugo, as she would run right past him. Bakugo didn't care about winning or losing, he just cared about smashing Todoroki's face in, as Bakugo would launch himself towards Todoroki, as Todoroki would narrowly dodge Bakugo's attack, as Bakugo would then turn around and would send a massive explosion right towards Todoroki, who would barely be able to block it with a wall of fire, as his eyes would widen in shock. He didn't mean to use his father's fire, but there's no turning back now. He's already used it, and now he's going to just easily mop the floor with Bakugo, as he would send a flurry of attacks right towards Bakugo, as these waves of fire would keep coming in, as Bakugo would easily just disperse of these flames using one explosion at a time, as Todoroki would then just send a massive flame right towards Bakugo, as this really wasn't a strong flame, and as soon as Bakugo dispersed of it with one of his explosions, the entire room filled with smoke, as Todoroki would then reveal himself right in front of Bakugo, sending a massive iceberg right towards Bakugo, who would smile saying, "You missed, idiot." However, Todoroki would then say, "Sure I did," before smashing his fist into the ice, causing tons and thousands of these little ice shards to go flying right towards Bakugo, implanting themselves into his skin all over his body, as he would stumble backwards as blood was then draining out of all of these holes, as Bakugo would then fall back to the ground, as Todoroki would then put the Quirk-canceling tape around Bakugo, signifying that he had been captured, as we cut to Izuku and Momo. Momo made it to the top of the building, as Izuku would be sleeping there, as Momo would try to sneak up to the device. However, Izuku would see this as he wasn't asleep. He would sense it, hearing her footsteps trying to walk up to the bomb, as he would open one eye before transforming into a lion, kicking off of the wall and going right towards Momo, as she would create a bar that she uses in the anime. It's, I believe, a staff or bow staff, I'm not quite sure the name of it. As Izuku's paws would wrap around Momo's staff, as she would be barely able to hold off the strength of Izuku, as Izuku wasn't using his strength at all, merely the weight of his body, as Izuku would finally push down on the bar as Momo would start to struggle, stepping back before stepping back again, as Izuku would then pick up the bar as he was now standing on his hind legs, before throwing her right at a window, as she would smash through the window, still barely holding on to her staff, as it would not be big enough to go, or it was too big to go through the window, barely holding her from going out, as Izuku would then see Todoroki in the doorway, as Izuku would rush at Todoroki, just swiping at him, breaking a massive glacier that was heading right towards him, as Izuku would end up going right at Todoroki, slamming both of his paws right into Todoroki's face. This would be too much for Todoroki, who had just gotten out of battle, knocking him out, as Izuku would then restrain Todoroki, as it would then be a one-on-one against Momo. There was now only 5 minutes left in the test, as Izuku would tell Momo that she can now come out of hiding. As Izuku, who had just easily beaten Todoroki, and the reason is Todoroki, yes, had just gotten out of a fight, and he really isn't a close-ranged fighter. He relies on his quirks to keep his opponents at bay and to tire them out, basically, before he can end up getting them. At least that's what I have seen from just Todoroki's fights. He really hasn't done any one-on-one combat real up close. At least I haven't seen any or can't remember any. So Momo would end up propelling herself through the window right at the device. However, Izuku was having none of this, jumping right at her before tackling her to the ground, as he would then transform back into a tiny house cat, before just sitting right on top of her head, as she would just start to suffocate, as she would grab Izuku before throwing him to a wall. Izuku would know that she was going to do this, so he would use the tinier body so she could throw him at a wall. Getting higher speed, he would then transform into, or he would remain in his tiny cat form, propelling himself off of the wall using his hind legs right back at Momo, as he would then transform into a lion before swiping down right at her, as he wouldn't really use the claws, but rather punch her across the face, as she would slam right into the wall, as All Might would then come over the intercom, saying that both of the heroes have been restrained, and that the villains won, with just 2 minutes left remaining for the heroes. As Izuku would end up smiling, before grabbing Momo, Todoroki, and Bakugo, and bringing them back to where All Might told them to. As Izuku would be congratulated for his victory, as he would smile, saying that it was nothing. He just wished Bakugo could have stayed a bit longer with the team instead of running away and getting himself captured so easily. So Izuku would end up being forced to bring all of the people that he knocked out and Bakugo to Recovery Girl's office. So he would end up dropping them off, putting them in their respective beds, so Recovery Girl would thank him, as he would then walk off back to the class, as he would be watching what they were doing and just all of the other battles, as he would see some of his friends would end up winning, while also some of them would end up losing. So a couple weeks would pass as Aizawa would start to teach all of the students about their field trip that they were going to go on. They had to be at their top behavior, and they couldn't really be doing too much stupid stuff. This was their first real field trip. It was their first basically real testing exercise that involved life or death. As sure, they faced off against each other, but one false mistake for something like the USJ place they were going to be doing, they could possibly just die, mostly in something like the fire zone or the wind zone, as they could end up just being falling off of a building or something like that. So they had to be taught safety rules and all of this about the USJ before they could end up going there. And that's where I'm going to leave this what if off, guys. I'm sorry this video isn't around 20 to 30 minutes long. I'm still kind of getting back into the uploading every single day thing. Remember, I did take a 5-day break, and it is quite hard to get back into uploading again and again and again. So I'm just trying to get back into the swing of things to upload every single day once more. So I thank you all for watching once again. Remember to join the community Discord down in the description below. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.